She called off the wedding, then I sold the engagement ring and built a business. 2 years later, she begged for a second chance. So when I first bought the engagement ring, I felt like I was holding the future in a velvet box. I'd saved for months, choosing the perfect stone, imagining the look on her face when I got down on one knee. For me, that ring symbolized stability, trust, and forever. We'd been together for 4 years, long enough, I thought, to know she was the one. She laughed at my dumb jokes, pushed me to be better, and shared my dream of building a life together, or at least I thought she did. Love makes you blind sometimes. The proposal itself was perfect, at least on the surface. I took her to the little restaurant where we'd had our first date. Candlelight, soft music, a nervous waiter in on the secret. I knelt down, opened the box, and asked her to be my wife. She said yes, and people clapped, but something about her voice felt hollow. There was hesitation in her eyes, a flicker of doubt she quickly buried beneath a smile. I told myself I was imagining it. I wanted so badly to believe everything was fine. We dove into planning the wedding, venues, dresses, guest lists. We opened a joint account for the wedding fund, both of us putting money into it. I thought we were building something together. I was wrong. She was already building her escape plan. A month before the wedding, she sat me down in the living room. She looked pale, her hands trembling as she twisted the ring around her finger. Then, with a sigh, she dropped the bomb. I'm not ready for a commitment. I can't do this. My ears rang. I wanted to shout to beg her to reconsider, but my pride kept me still. Instead, I nodded and said, I understand. It was the hardest sentence I'd ever spoken. It felt like ripping my own heart out and handing it back to her. She cried, apologized, said she hoped we could stay friends. I couldn't even look at her. I walked out, leaving behind the life I thought we were about to start. I left with nothing but the ring and my half of the wedding fund. For weeks I was lost. I stared at that ring like it was mocking me. For years, countless memories, and it all ended with 6 words. I'm not ready for a commitment. But one night, my best friend Mark showed up with takeout and an idea. He reminded me of the dream we'd shared in college, starting a company together. Why not now, he said. At first I laughed. My life felt over. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Maybe this wasn't an ending. Maybe it was a beginning. The next day, I sold the ring. Watching it slide across the jeweler's counter hurt, but walking out with that check felt liberating. I had closed one door, but another was swinging wide open. I didn't know it yet, but that choice would change everything. The first few months after the breakup felt like walking through fog. Every corner of my apartment reminded me of her, the framed photo on the shelf, the half-packed boxes of wedding decorations. Even the smell of her perfume still clinging to my couch cushions. But Mark wouldn't let me drown in self-pity. He showed up almost daily, dragging me out for coffee, scribbling ideas on napkins, and reminding me of the dream we once shared. This is your reset button, man, he kept saying. Let's build something of our own. We started small. The wedding fund and the check from the ring weren't millions, but it was enough to get us off the ground. We set up shop in his garage, working with second-hand equipment and a whiteboard covered in half-baked plans. The company began as a side hustle, TEC consulting app, design, and small business solutions. Nothing glamorous, but we poured our hearts into it. Nights stretched into mornings, weekends blurred. Failure lurked around every corner, but so did possibility. I won't live. Those days were brutal. While my ex was probably sipping cocktails with friends, I was eating instant noodles at 2 a.m., staring at lines of code that refused to work. But for the first time since the breakup, I felt alive again. Every little win mattered. Our first client, a local coffee shop, paid us a modest check for setting up their online ordering system. We framed the receipt on the wall, grinning like kids who'd found treasure. It wasn't much, but it was proof we could succeed. As the months rolled on, word spread. One client turned into 5, then 10. Our garage office became too cramped, so we rented a tiny workspace downtown. It was nothing fancy, peeling paint, buzzing fluorescent lights, but to us, it was a kingdom. I poured every ounce of myself into that business. Each dollar earned was validation. Proof that I didn't need her. Proof that heartbreak hadn't destroyed me. It had fueled me. I wasn't building a wedding anymore. I was building a future. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about her. Did she feel relief? Did she laugh about dodging a bullet? Did she picture me broken and stuck in place while she moved on? So, I hoped she was enjoying the fantasy, because reality was shifting. 2 years passed in what felt like a blur. The company grew faster than either of us imagined. By then we had employees, big-name clients, and revenue that made my old salary look like pocket change. And just when I was too busy to think about her, she reappeared. It started with a text, "Hey, can we talk?" I think I made a mistake. My heart didn't skip. My stomach didn't twist. Instead, I smirked, because by then, I realized she hadn't just made a mistake. She had made the biggest mistake of her life. Her first text was short, almost cautious. "Hey, how have you been?" No apology, no acknowledgement, just a fishing line tossed into the water. I let it sit there, unanswered, because part of me wanted to see what bait she'd throw next. A few days later, another came. "I think I made a mistake." Those words hit differently, not because I wanted her back, but because I could almost hear her voice saying them. It hesitant, regretful, but dripping with the realization that she'd gambled and lost. I didn't respond, but the messages kept coming. "I miss you. I didn't know what I had until it was gone. Can we at least talk?" It was like she was unraveling in real time, trying to claw back the future she'd tossed aside. Out of curiosity, I peeked at her social media. Gone were the glamorous vacation photos and flashy parties. She looked tired. Posts about her amazing single life had dried up. Instead, there were vague quotes about regret, second chances, and true love. Meanwhile, my own life had blossomed. Our company had just landed its biggest contract yet. Gone from eating instant noodles to sitting in conference rooms with CEOs. My best friend and I were finally seeing the payoff for every sleepless night. And that contrast made her words sting less and amuse me more. 2 years ago, she'd said she wasn't ready for commitment. She was begging for the very stability I had created without her. Life has a way of flipping the script. One night she called. I didn't answer. The voicemail was shaky, almost frantic. "Please, just hear me out." I was scared. I thought I wanted freedom, but I realized now that what I wanted was us. I realized now I ruined everything. For a second, I almost felt sympathy. Almost. But then I remembered sitting in that living room, watching her slide the ring off her finger. I remembered her words, sharp as knives. "I'm not ready for a commitment." That memory was enough to steal my resolve. My friends asked if I'd give her another chance. I laughed. Why would I? I had grown, healed, and built a life better than anything we'd planned together. Taking her back would be like reopening a wound I had finally let scar over. So I kept ignoring her. As the texts grew longer, the calls more frequent. She even showed up outside my office once, waiting in the lobby with that desperate look I remembered from the breakup. Except this time, it wasn't me who was powerless. And in that moment, I realized something beautiful. The man she left behind no longer existed. The man standing in front of her now had already found everything she was searching for, and none of it had come from her. I finally agreed to meet her, mostly out of curiosity. I wanted to see what she had to say face to face, without the safety of a screen. We chose a quiet cafe downtown. When I walked in, she was already there, nervously stirring a cup of coffee. The moment she saw me, her eyes lit up with something between relief and desperation. She stood quickly, arms open, but I kept my hands at my sides. We sat down, and for a second it felt like we were strangers sharing a table. She launched into her story immediately, how she had panicked before the wedding, how she thought freedom meant happiness, but it only left her empty, how she missed us, missed me, and wanted another chance. Her words tumbled over each other like a dam breaking. I listened quietly, sipping my drink, letting her spill it all. Her voice cracked when she admitted, "I thought you'd always be there waiting. Thought I could come back whenever I was ready." That sentence told me everything I needed to know. To her, I had been a safety net, not a partner. Someone she could discard, then reclaim when life didn't pan out the way she imagined. She wasn't here because of love. She was here because success had made me valuable again. I asked one question. If my company had failed, would you still be sitting here right now? She froze, her lips parted, but no words came out. Her silence was louder than any answer she could have given. That was my confirmation. She reached across the table, her hand brushing mine. I made a mistake. Please, let's try again. I know we can be happy. Her eyes were glossy, her smile trembling. Once, that look would have broken me. Now, it only reminded me of who I had become. I pulled my hand back gently. You didn't want commitment then. You don't get to want it now, just because I've built something worth wanting. My voice was calm, steady, final. Her face fell like a house of cards collapsing in the wind. She whispered, "So that's it? You're just going to walk away?" I nodded. That's it. I already did 2 years ago. You just didn't notice. And with that, I stood, left a tip for my coffee, and walked out without looking back. Outside, the evening air felt cool and sharp. For the first time, I didn't feel like the one abandoned. I felt like the one in control. She had gambled with my heart, and now she was learning the cost of losing. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with another message from her. Please, don't do this. I turned the screen off, because for me it was already done. After that cafe meeting, I thought she'd finally get the message. I had been clear, direct, and final. But some people don't let go easily, especially when regret mixes with desperation. That's when the floodgates really opened. She started showing up unannounced. Once at my office, another time outside my apartment building, waiting by the intercom like some ghost of my past who refused to move on. Each time, her pleas grew more frantic, her voice cracking with the weight of her mistakes. One night, I came home to find a handwritten letter slipped under my door. Pages of apologies, confessions, and promises that she'd changed. She wrote about how she realized too late what real love was. But every line felt less like love and more like a negotiation. My best friend, Mark, saw the situation for what it was. She's not in love with you, man, he said one night as we were locking up the office. She's in love with what you've become. Don't confuse the two. His words stuck with me, because deep down, I knew he was right. If I had stayed the same guy, she walked away from heartbroken, scrambling, unsure of myself. She wouldn't have shown up. It wasn't me she wanted back. It was the version of me she could now benefit from. Meanwhile, my life was fuller than ever. The company was thriving and new doors kept opening. We had investors interested, partnerships forming, and opportunities that once felt like dreams were suddenly within reach. I had no space for someone trying to drag me backward, but she didn't stop. She messaged mutual friends, trying to get updates about me. Some even asked if I'd reconsider. I just shook my head. She made her choice, I'd tell them. And so did I. It wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. The more she tried to wedge her way back in, the more distant I felt. It was strange, almost freeing, to realize I didn't carry anger anymore. She couldn't hurt me. She couldn't control me. All she could do was watch the life she abandoned continue without her. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker, my phone buzzed again. Another message. I still love you. Please, I know we're meant to be. I stared at the words for a moment, then deleted it without replying. That silence, my silence, was more powerful than any speech I could have given. Because the truth was simple. I wasn't hers to win back anymore. I belonged to my own future now, and she had no place in it. Weeks turned into months, and eventually, her messages slowed. The silence wasn't sudden. It was like a fire burning out, crackling weaker each day, until nothing but smoke remained. And with that silence, I felt a different kind of peace settle in. I didn't celebrate her absence. There was no victory dance or smug satisfaction. What I felt was deeper. Freedom. I wasn't defined by her leaving anymore. Wasn't fueled by revenge or the need to prove her wrong. I'd simply outgrown the person she left behind. My company became more than a business. It was a symbol of resilience. Every meeting, every milestone, every handshake reminded me of the man I had built myself into. Not for her, not to show off, but because that's who I was always meant to become. And life had more to offer than work. Somewhere along the way, I started letting new people in. Real connections, built not on fear or convenience, but on authenticity. I learned that love doesn't beg or demand its supports. It grows. It fits naturally. One evening, Mark and I were at a networking event. A woman approached, confident and kind, asking about our work. We laughed, we talked, and something about it felt effortless. That's when it hit me. I didn't need closure from the past, because the future was already opening. I never responded to my ex's final messages, not out of cruelty, but because nothing needed to be said. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. The paths we walked no longer crossed, and that was exactly how it should be. Sometimes people don't realize the value of what they have until it's gone. Other times they mistake comfort for love, and only when comfort disappears do they panic. Either way, her regret was never mine to carry. It belonged to her alone. I often think back to the day she told me she wasn't ready for commitment. In that moment, I thought my life had shattered. Now I see it differently. That wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a better one. If she ever looks at me now, I hope she sees what I see when I look in the mirror. Not the man she left, but the man who stood up, built something from nothing, and learned to value himself above all. And as for me, I don't live in bitterness. I don't live in regret. I live in possibility. The past is a closed chapter, and I have no desire to reopen it. Because the best part of moving forward is realizing you never needed what you lost. If you've made it this far, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.